I was padding down the stairs in my pajamas when I saw him standing at the stove making coffee, and when he turned around and said, "I knew you'd grow up to be beautiful," something in his voice made me realize this conversation was going to change everything. It was the morning after Rachel's graduation party, and I'd crashed at her house like I had 100 times before over the years. But when I walked into the kitchen expecting to find Rachel's mom making her famous pancakes, I found him instead, tall, graying at the temples, wearing a UCLA t-shirt that showed off arms that were more muscular than I remembered. "Good morning, Emma," he said, and there was something different in the way he looked at me, something that made my skin flush with awareness I didn't want to acknowledge. Before I continue this, hit that subscribe button. I post one real story every single day. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'm always curious who my stories are reaching. I'd known David Martinez since I was 12 years old, when Rachel and I became best friends and I started spending every weekend at their house. He was Rachel's dad, the cool parent who drove us to concerts and helped with homework and never made us feel like we were in the way. He was safe, familiar, part of the furniture of my adolescence. But standing there in his kitchen at 8 a.m., fresh from sleep and wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt and shorts, I suddenly felt like I was seeing him for the first time. "Where's Rachel?" I asked, trying to keep my voice normal while my heart did something irregular in my chest. "Still sleeping." She was pretty tired after last night's festivities. David poured coffee into 2 mugs and handed one to me. "I figured you might want some caffeine before facing the day." "Thanks." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, grateful for something to do with them. "Where's Mrs. Martinez?" "Linda's visiting her sister in Phoenix for the week." "It's just us this morning." "Just us." The words hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning I wasn't sure I was ready to unpack. "David," I said carefully, "what did you mean when you said what you said about me growing up?" He was quiet for a moment, studying my face like he was trying to decide something important. "Emma, how old are you now?" 25. 25. He repeated it like he was testing how the number felt. "When did that happen?" "Gradually, I think. That's usually how aging works." David smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You know what I mean. When did you stop being Rachel's little friend and become this?" He gestured at me, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." The certainty in his voice made my breath catch. We looked at each other across the kitchen island, and I felt something shift between us, something that had probably been building for longer than I wanted to admit. "David, I know this is inappropriate. I know I'm too old for you, and I know you're Rachel's best friend, and I know I should have never said anything." He set down his coffee mug and looked at me directly. "But I also know that you feel it too." My heart was racing now, and not just from caffeine. "Feel what?" "This thing between us. This tension that's been building every time you come home from college, every time I see you at family gatherings, every time you look at me like you're seeing something new." I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off and change the subject and pretend we were still just Emma and Mr. Martinez, like we'd been for 13 years. But the truth was, he was right. There had been something shifting between us, something I'd been trying to ignore because acknowledging it felt dangerous and wrong and completely impossible. "You're Rachel's dad," I said weakly. "I'm aware of that. You've known me since I was 12. I've watched you grow up, yes. But, Emma, you're not 12 anymore. You haven't been for a long time. How long have you?" I trailed off, not sure I wanted to know the answer. "How long have I what?" "Been attracted to you?" David ran a hand through his hair. "Since you were about 22 and came home from college for Christmas with that new confidence, that way of carrying yourself like you finally knew who you were." 3 years. He'd been thinking about me this way for 3 years. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you're graduating from grad school next month. Because you're about to start your own life, your own career, and once that happens, I probably won't see you very much anymore." He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, something clean and masculine that made me want to lean into him. "Because I couldn't let you walk away without knowing that someone sees you, really sees you, and thinks you're extraordinary. What would you do if you were in my place? Tell me in the comments." I stared at this man who had been a constant presence in my life for over a decade, This person I'd trusted and relied on and never thought of as anything other than a parental figure. But now, looking at him, really looking at him, I could see what I'd been unconsciously noticing for months. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. The silver threading through his dark hair that made him look distinguished instead of old. The way he listened when I talked about my thesis or my job prospects, like my thoughts actually mattered to him. David, this is crazy. I know. You're 44 years old. 43, actually, but who's counting? I am, apparently. I set down my coffee mug with shaking hands. You're Rachel's father. She's my best friend. This would destroy everything. It doesn't have to. How can you say that? Of course it would. She'd feel betrayed, your wife would be devastated, and I'd lose the closest thing to a family I've had since my parents died. David's expression softened at the mention of my parents, and I saw the moment he remembered that the Martinezes had been my surrogate family since the car accident that killed my mom and dad when I was 19. Emma, he said gently, what if it didn't have to be a betrayal? What if it could be something beautiful? How? I don't know. But I know that what I feel for you isn't just attraction. It's not some midlife crisis or inappropriate fantasy. He stepped closer again, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. It's love, Emma. Real, deep, complicated love that I never expected and definitely never asked for. The word hit me like a physical blow. Love. He was talking about love, not just some passing attraction or moment of weakness. You can't love me, I whispered. Why not? Because it's impossible. Because it's wrong. Because what? Because you're young? Because I knew you when you were a kid. David reached up and touched my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. Emma, I fell in love with the woman you became, not the child you were. I fell in love with your intelligence and your kindness and your terrible sense of humor. I fell in love with the way you argue about books and the way you cry at commercials and the way you make everyone around you feel like they matter. I was crying now, tears I hadn't realized were falling. David, I can't. We can't. Why not? Because I love you too. The words came out before I could stop them, and I saw something like relief flood his face. Emma. But that doesn't make this okay. That doesn't make it possible. What if we took it slow? What if we waited until you were established in your career, until you were in a place where you didn't need the family connection as much? What if we gave ourselves time to figure out if this is real or just complicated proximity? I looked at him, at this man who had been such a constant in my life, who had seen me through high school heartbreaks and college stress and graduate school anxiety, who had never made me feel like I was in the way or like my problems were too small to matter. What about Rachel? Rachel loves you. She wants you to be happy. She's not going to want me to be happy with her father. Maybe not at first. But Emma, she's not a child anymore either. She's going to understand that sometimes love happens in unexpected ways. And your wife? David's expression grew complicated, and I saw him struggle with how to answer. Linda and we've been having problems for a while. We've been going to counseling, but honestly, I think we've both known for some time that we're better as co-parents than as spouses. He looked at me directly. This thing with you didn't create those problems, Emma. It just made me realize what I've been missing. I felt something shift in my chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. David, this is terrifying. I know. If we do this, if we try this, there's no going back. Everything changes. Everything's already changed, Emma. The only question is whether we're brave enough to see where it leads. I thought about my life, about the job I was starting in San Francisco, about the independence I'd worked so hard to achieve. Then I thought about this man who had been there for every important moment of my adult life, who knew me better than almost anyone, who was looking at me like I was something precious and worth fighting for. What would this look like? I asked quietly. I don't know. We'd figure it out as we go. David stepped even closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to look at him. But it would start with me taking you to dinner somewhere we can talk without worrying about who might see us. It would start with us being honest about what we want instead of pretending it doesn't exist. When? Tonight, if you want. Tomorrow. Next week. Whenever you're ready. I reached up and touched his face, feeling the slight roughness of morning stubble against my palm. I'm scared, I whispered. So am I. What if it doesn't work? What if we try this and it ruins everything? What if we don't try it and spend the rest of our lives wondering what might have been? David leaned down slowly, giving me plenty of time to pull away, and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was soft and careful and electric, like coming home to a place I'd never been but had always been searching for. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Emma," he whispered against my lips. "Tell me what you're thinking." "I'm thinking that I've been in love with you for longer than I want to admit, and I'm terrified that means I'm a terrible person." "You're not a terrible person. You're human." "I'm thinking that if we do this, we have to be completely honest with each other about everything. No secrets, no pretending, no trying to protect each other from difficult truths." "Agreed. And we have to tell Rachel. Not right away, but soon. She deserves to know." "She does." "And David." "Yeah. If you ever make me feel like this is just some fantasy for you, if you ever make me feel like I'm just a way to recapture your youth or rebel against your marriage, I will walk away and never look back." David cupped my face in his hands and looked at me with an intensity that took my breath away. "Emma, you are not a fantasy. You are not a midlife crisis. You are the most real thing that's happened to me in years." He kissed me again, deeper this time. "You are the future I didn't know I wanted until I found myself looking at it." We spent the rest of the morning talking, really talking, about what this would mean and how we'd navigate the complications and what we both wanted from a relationship that would require us to redefine everything we thought we knew about love and family and appropriate timing. When Rachel finally came downstairs around noon, she found us sitting at opposite ends of the kitchen island, carefully maintaining distance, but unable to hide the new energy between us. "You two are acting weird," she said, pouring herself coffee. "We're just talking," I said, but my voice came out higher than normal. Rachel looked between us suspiciously, and I could see the moment she noticed something different in the way her father was looking at me. "Dad," she said slowly. "What's going on?" David and I exchanged glances, and I realized that the conversation we'd been planning to have later was going to happen right now. "Rachel," David said carefully, "Emma and I need to talk to you about something." 6 months later, David and I had our first official date at a restaurant in San Francisco, where I'd started my new job and he'd driven up to visit. Rachel had been shocked, then confused, then surprisingly understanding once she realized that what we had was real and not just some inappropriate impulse. It wasn't easy. There were difficult conversations and hurt feelings and moments when I wondered if we'd made a terrible mistake. But there were also quiet Sunday mornings and long phone calls and the slow, careful building of something that felt more solid than anything I'd ever experienced. Before I go, thank you. These stories are real. They're mine. And I share one every day. If you want to hear more, subscribe. We're taking it slow, David and I, building something real on the foundation of 13 years of trust and 3 years of growing awareness and 6 months of honest, complicated love. People still comment on our unconventional beginning, on the age difference, on the complexity of loving someone who's been part of your life in a different way for so long. But David teaches me not to listen to other people's ideas about what our love should look like, and I teach him that sometimes the most unexpected things turn out to be exactly what we needed all along.